All right, so today to the podcast, we welcome Jose Mourinho to talk about his time at Manchester United.
Yeah,
No,
thank you,
so
Mark.
today we have Joe Smith, who I'm not going to spoil the spotlight, and I'll let you give us a little bit of background into who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Marky. All right. Yeah, Mark and I have known each other for probably, I don't know, 15, 20 years growing up together. Had a number of lucrative offers to get on a podcast before this one, the likes of Joe Rogan and Call Her Daddy. I think that's the one you were telling me about earlier. But once the Triple M health call came through, I just thought this is my chance to make my debut on the podcasting scene. So, yeah, like I said, grew up with Mark and then finished school in 2017, something like that, and went on to do Bachelor of Exercise Physiology in Armidale at the University of New England. And then straight out of that, I was lucky enough to get a job in Newcastle at Hunter Rehabilitation and Health, which is a private exercise physiology clinic. And yeah, over the last 3.5 years, gone super quick. But yeah, here I am today making my podcasting debut. So, and what better man to run me through it, eh?
Very nice. Looking forward to it. Did you do your placement at Hunter Rehab, or that was a job offer after your placement and after your degree?
Yeah, so hopefully the listeners have a bit of an understanding of what's required. We've got, in our third year, we have to do an exercise and sports science placement. So I did that online as we were going through COVID at its peak, basically. So that was maybe 4 to 5 weeks of basically torture. Just, yeah, people having to sign up and do stuff via Zoom, which was hard. I mean, it was probably a good learning experience, but completely different to probably a lot of other people's degrees and how they'd normally go through their placement. And then in my fourth year, given I was still living back home in Inverell, my first placement was at a place called 360 Health Clinic in Tamworth. And my second one was in Glen Ennis. Had a super good time at both of those, but the place in Tamworth, I got along really well with a couple of the girls there. And one of them actually did her placement down here at Hunter Rehab. And she just said, like, I really enjoyed my time there. I feel like you'd fit in really well down there. You should, apply for the job that was coming for the next year. So it's always a, bit of a risk being a new grad. Like there's probably other people out there that have a lot more qualifications or experience than you do. But I thought, why not? It's probably time to get away from home like you've done, mate. And yeah, it's worked out super well. So she put in a good word for me. Luckily, she still had good contacts down this way.
Surprisingly.
So yeah, mate, it was unbelievable. Yeah, there was a lot of good times actually on that placement. I still look back very fondly on it. It was always professional, but there was a couple of times there throughout group classes and stuff where we'd find ourselves probably laughing a little bit too much. So yeah, really fond memories. And if there was a chance to link back up in the future, then obviously I've got those connections out there too. But yeah, that's how I kind of got straight into this work, and yeah, haven't looked back.
Yeah, nice. And what drew you to exercise physiology, and how have you found that like since graduating?
I think we're a lot of people that do end up in EP have kind of probably come about it from the same angle where they've grown up playing a lot of sport like we have, and you might have had some sort of injury throughout that time. Luckily, I actually haven't been through any of that, but it was always keeping yourself active through sport and trying to, I guess, stay fit and healthy, whether that be through just running or getting into the gym or whatever. And then just having that kind of nature that you want to help people when you get older. And if you've got that kind of power to do so through work, then super rewarding. So at first it was probably more the physio side of things because it probably wasn't, well, it's definitely not as well known, EP. And then I kind of just fell into the degree because I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. So it probably, made it like something that I didn't really have to think about. I just got into it in Armidale, and then after a few years, it all kind of just fell into place. And once I started to learn more about, I guess, what the degree was about and how you could use it in day-to-day life and what sort of jobs were available, it made sense to continue on this path. And it doesn't mean I can't go on and do further study further down the track if the opportunity comes, or if you feel like you need to do more study or whatever. There's always that option there too.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, that's pretty general gist of why people get into this role is like that sporting background. But you don't quite like maybe the goal of professional sport or something like that is a little bit out of the question, but it's like, you still have that passion of performance, of training, of being physically active. And
Yep.
then you sort of get led down the path of helping other people that aren't quite as passionate about it as you become more passionate about it and make it bigger parts of their life as well. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
definitely. Can you
absolutely.
think of like a specific, really rewarding experience that sort of like solidified that this is what you wanted to do?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd say a particular moment, or I guess some sort of rewarding bit of work that we did. There's nothing that really comes to mind straight away, but I guess we do. Well, I in particular do a lot of work in like the work cover side of things. So I guess when you see those people that come in and they've got pain or something that it's stopping them from being able to do their work, which obviously, everyone should love their job. Not everyone does, but yeah, either that, getting people back to work's super rewarding, but also seeing them get back to doing the stuff outside of work. Like they don't want to be here, they don't want to be coming in. You shouldn't want to be on workers' comp. So I guess yeah, seeing those people get back to doing whatever makes them happy, whether that be gardening or surfing or whatever. It's obviously you get a wide variety of clients that all have different interests. So it's definitely that yeah, seeing them get back to doing whatever makes them happy.
Yep, yep. And you mentioned there like work cover being the biggest like sort of role you play in your work. We'll get into this in a little bit later on as well, but is there any other particular areas where you guys focus on, or is it a lot of work cover stuff? Is yeah, I guess what's
Yeah,
the
I'd
main
say
clientele that you see and any
yeah, yeah,
trends
yeah.
there?
Okay. Yeah, I'd say probably 50% of the guys' caseloads here. So there's 9 of us that are practicing EPs. There's still like the manager and the clinic owner are both EPs. They don't see as many clients as we do, but they'll fill in wherever. So I'd say, yeah, probably 50% of the clients are work cover and CTP, which, yeah, obviously gives you plenty of work throughout the week in terms of I guess the amount of sessions and then the administrative side of things, which isn't as much fun, but you got to keep everyone up to date with how things are going. And then the other 50% would be probably next most common would probably be the NDIS, but obviously there's been a few changes there recently too, so I feel like that's probably dropped off a little bit. And then you've got your DVA, my aged care, which we probably don't do as much of as we used to. And then you got your privates and your Medicares who, obviously they fill in a few of few of the gaps throughout the week. And they're a good challenge, just something different. And they're generally those people that, aren't probably too fond of the exercise. So you got to really work your magic with them to get some good outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. And where do you see like, I guess the industry going at the moment? Like, do you see and this could be industry as in exercise physiology, it could be like fitness space in general, health space in general. How do you see that traveling at the moment? Do you feel like it's going in a good direction, a bad direction? What does that look like to you?
I think it's definitely going in a positive direction. I think in terms of exercise physiology, like there's more and more people graduating each year, and there's becoming like more understanding of what we do, just in the general community, but also through the people who refer to us, which is most obviously like the most important part. If people don't know, the doctors don't know what we do, then how can we expect people to come in here if they've still got their beliefs about other allied health, which may still be accurate, but if they don't know what we do, it makes it so hard for them to try and get me to client to come in and do exercise. If the doctor's not going to promote
Yeah,
it, why would they come and listen to us?
definitely.
And then in
And I feel
terms of
like for
just
so
exercise in
long,
general, yeah,
I feel like for so long they've been like physio, 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 and it's like now
yeah,
there's this new kid on the block. It's like what do we actually do, and how do we help people differently to physio as well?
yeah, for sure. And I think probably with that too, given how long physios have been around for, and there's, absolutely they're awesome, and some of them will be still be really good at doing a lot of the stuff we do too. But in terms of that, there's probably a lot of physios that are a bit older too. So I mean, automatically you look at someone and you look at us. I'm still looking like a 14-year-old, and they're going, "What does this guy know?" And you see the bald old physio. Not that they're bald and old, all of them, but they're going to look at that person and go, "Well, he's older, so he has to know more." Whereas, you know, more than likely or not, it could be the case, but it may not be the case also. They might have only just graduated, or they might have the same beliefs that were relevant in 1990, and we're just coming out of uni and we should have the most up-to-date research. So,
Yeah,
there's a big
very
role for
true.
us to play there, trying to educate the doctors. But I don't know, do you do any of that? Do you go around to the doctors and try and
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
them through what we do?
do a little bit of that. So I've got a couple of like local doctors' surgeries that often refer to me. Probably not as much as I would like, but that's obviously something that you have to keep at for a long period of time for them to really, think of you each time that a patient of theirs comes in as like, I've got this problem. Like, and for so long they would have been physio, here, go see a physiotherapist, go get it diagnosed and get your injury fixed. And it's like,
Mm.
I guess educating them around like, we're not just there to fix the injury, but also to understand why it happened in the first place and try and prevent it from happening again. Not just
Yep.
like, here's some corrective exercises. This should help it feel better. Like, I'm not saying that all physios are like that as well, but I know from like experience of treating people that have seen a physiotherapist initially for their injury and it not actually fixed anything. It's like, it's sort of the common thing is here's the corrective exercises, not actually a long term plan that's going to make sure that it one fixes it to make sure it doesn't happen again. So
Yep.
I think that's the biggest thing there is trying to educate the GPs on what the difference is between the two because they just like I guess they don't fully understand how you're different to a physio and if you are different from a physio why would they refer to you instead of the physio that they've been referring to for years. It's like trying
Yep.
to really promote that and make them understand the difference and why they would actually refer to you is the most challenging thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
about you? Have you had to experience any of the doctors' meets or anything like that, or that's sort of left to higher up for in your company?
No, there's definitely been more of an emphasis on it, like the further you get through in terms of your experience. So when you're first coming in, there's obviously a lot more to focus on just in terms of your clinical work and just building up your calendar and getting yourself organised and make sure you're on track with all that. And then once you're pretty sweet with that, there's that expectation that now it's time to try and help. I guess bring clients into the clinic, which is I mean it's not something that comes naturally. It's quite hard to go and kind of talk
Yeah,
yourself up and try and be a salesman to doctors, and especially
definitely.
these
Yeah,
people that you're like, oh, like doctors know everything. Um, yeah,
that
so
exercise, maybe not.
no, that's right, and that's something that you've got to get used to too. You know way more about your area than they do. Just because they
Yeah,
have that degree and we've got this degree, it doesn't mean they know everything. Like they don't know how to build houses. Some of them might, but they don't know
neither
these
do I, but
exercises. No, that's right, mate. But if a builder's going in there, you'd think the doctor might know how to build the house too. I think there's definitely a lot more expectation to do it, and it's still something that I wouldn't say I'm great at. But each time you kind of put yourself in those situations where you're a bit uncomfortable and you got to go and do some sort of presentation to a doctor or another health professional trying to bring work into the clinics, another opportunity for growth. I can definitely see why they kind of encourage us to do it, let's say.
yeah, it's tough as well because like most of the time you're going into their lunch and they don't actually want to hear what you have to say either. It's just like, oh, another rep in here.
Yeah, they
We'll
just want to
have
know
their
what's on the
lunch and then
wraps.
yeah.
Why we got the vegan wraps? I like
Yeah,
meat.
literally,
Yeah, mate,
literally,
I
and then
agree.
it's like you've got to actually get their attention, and then actually have them engaged in that as well.
Mm.
It's a bit of a challenging one in the world of the GP meets, but yeah, definitely one that doesn't come naturally to me either. But the more I've sort of well, I guess in when I was working for a company, it wasn't as much of a big deal. I didn't sort of get to that point where I needed to. But
Yep.
working for yourself, it's like, dude, no one else is gonna do it. It's like it's
Yeah, that's
you or
right.
no one.
Yeah.
It's say and like sure you can get clients elsewhere, and it doesn't have to be through like Medicare or GP referrals, but it is like a good one that you want to tap into to get consistent referrals as well. So, yeah, definitely not something that comes easy, but also not something that you can kind of get someone else to do when you do work for yourself. So, you
Yeah,
kind of have to
exactly.
get
Yep.
pushed in that direction.
Yeah, and obviously you're working for yourself, so like the incentive you get out of it is clients coming in, whereas in
Yeah.
a space like ours, like we mightn't be lucky enough where they incentivize it, but here they do give you some reward if you are to bring direct referrals into the clinic. So even if it isn't something that isn't necessarily enjoyable, it is always a good feeling when someone does get referred across because obviously shows you're doing some good work and there's a little incentive there for us too. So yeah,
Yeah.
keeps you working at it.
Yeah, definitely. What are like some of the most common injuries or conditions you see yourself treating?
That's a good question. I feel like it goes through stages where you might see a lot of this certain joint or this certain part of the body. I'd say, like, thinking about, like, obviously you get a lot of lower back, which is always a tricky one, and they tend to be long term ones that have already seen other specialists and different doctors and whatnot, and they might have been at the physio for extended period of time without much success. So they're probably the trickiest ones, and they given the amount of time that they've had the pain for and the different habits they've got themselves into, and probably the deterioration of their health just in general, they tend to probably hang around a little bit longer, as much as you wouldn't like them to, just in terms of you want to get them back doing what they love. Then that's a hard one. But in terms of there's plenty of variety. Like, there's some guys in here that specialize in certain areas. Like, they really like their type 2 diabetes type of stuff, the endocrinology side of things. I wouldn't say I'm as big on that. I probably prefer the musculoskeletal side of things, but I still feel like it's relatively early doors in terms of saying that, I'm really good at this or this. It's kind of just whatever comes through. It's always good to challenge yourself. I've got a couple of ankle injuries at the moment, which is a bit of a different one to work with, but I feel like it's always nice to have a bit of variety. But what about yourself? Do you feel like you seem to get certain
Uh,
types of injuries pretty often?
yeah, definitely. I think lower back pain wherever you go is always the most common one.
Hmm.
The other one I get quite a lot of is shoulder injuries. So
Yeah.
lots of like bursitis, rotator cuff related
Hmm.
injuries there. I think,
Yeah.
I suppose, like I say, low back pain, some of that's probably hip related stuff as well. So whether that's hip bursitis or a little bit of like SIJ pain or something like that is quite common, I find, particularly in like middle-aged females. But yeah, no real specific pattern. It's just kind of, like you said, it goes in phases. How do you go about like treating your back pain clients? Like, what's your main focus in when you're seeing those people in both the initial and in the treatment?
Yeah, I think it's definitely changed a lot over the 3 years that I've been working. Probably when I first got into it, you're just like, okay, what are they presenting with? What sort of exercises can we give them to start working on, and probably mainly just focus on that, how they're responding to that, and are they recovering okay after the sessions, and are they doing stuff from home and outside of that? Probably not thinking about it too much, but I think it's something that I've really grown in terms of understanding that there's a lot more factors to it than just, they got back pain here, a few exercises that'll fix them up. So obviously getting an understanding of probably what's causing the pain to start with, and trying to, eliminate the best you can, and try and work on, why that might be happening. But I think massive factors are obviously getting an understanding of what their beliefs are around doing exercise and recovery, and what you're eating and what you're putting into your body and how you're sleeping and stuff like that. There's so many factors to it. So feel like, even if you don't necessarily have, that one magic exercise that no one has, if you can get a lot of those other things under control, it'll make a massive difference. Like, I feel like, I was thinking about it the other day, like, you have some of your best clients. Like, I love all my clients, mate. But, it seems like those ones that you get along with really well, like they're the best people that you meet coming into work. They're the ones that don't hang around that long because they've got so many aspects of their life under control. Not saying these other people don't have their life under control, but it makes such a big difference in terms of, if there's less stress on you outside of, your injury, it's going to be, it's going to make a world of difference. So, um, yeah, that's where I'm at with that. It's
Yeah.
always different depending on the person, but you got to treat it holistically and try and understand what's going on in different aspects of their life. So, any input on that
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, like, well, I guess I've just got an extra question on top of that is like the mentality of someone that succeeds versus someone that doesn't. Do you notice any particular patterns in their how they think about their injury on whether they
Yeah,
succeed or whether they don't?
yeah. I definitely feel like those people that are more likely to have a successful outcome are the ones that are like, they're happy to do the movement, listen to your recommendations. They're coming to you. You're the health professional. Like, the ones that are fear avoidant, don't want to do anything. They're more likely the ones that are going to stay in that pain state. So it's definitely the people that come in with a positive outlook, and obviously there's a bit of a skill in that too, talking to them and getting them to trust you, that you know what you're talking about and you've listened to them, build that bit of rapport, and then you're going to put a plan together with them that's going to work for them.
Yeah, especially when you're
But
a famous football manager, it's tough, hey?
yeah, I just put the whiteboard up, mate, and I point at them. I spit on them. Yeah, it's definitely a massive mentality thing. What their thoughts are probably about exercise beforehand and how they've had things treated in the past and their different experiences, and then probably the people around them also. You come to
Yeah.
learn pretty quickly when someone's, on my knees playing up for whatever reason, and then their father's had some sort of hectic knee surgery too, when they're thinking, well, that might end up happening to me because now I've got a knee injury. So it's all very much, the product of the environment and who's around them and who's influencing them. I find, yeah, massive impact on their recovery, but I'm sure you're much the same with that.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I think one of the biggest things as well is people holding off on actually getting help with their injury. And why do you think that that is most of the time? Like, why do you think people hesitate on getting help with whatever it is that they're struggling with in that moment?
Yeah, I think there's probably some people out there probably just think it's just gonna get better. Like, or they're just misinformed on. I watch a lot of your videos where people will be like, oh, if I just keep moving it how they think's appropriate, then it'll come good. But you might need to keep moving it. More than likely not, you do. But in different ways, or you might need to alter your program, what you're doing at that time. So I feel like, yeah, either some people might just think, oh, it'll get better. It's happened to me before. I've had a little niggle here. It come good, and then they keep doing whatever they're doing, and it just continues to escalate to the point where then they need the help, and it's a lot worse than it could have been. But also, yeah. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think like on top of that, it is quite hard to go to someone, maybe if you have had that previous experience as well and be like, oh, I need help with this, or, and their guidance on exercise or whatever might change what you're currently doing and it's gonna throw you out of routine, or you know,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
can be a little bit of a daunting experience to go and ask someone for help in relation to an injury, especially if it is something that you think is just going to get better, or, it's hard to know who to trust and different things
Hmm.
like that as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
On top of that as well, like I had a question in terms of how you find treating clients that have had like experience with other practitioners, say at a different profession or even same profession but different style of treatment
Hmm.
that hasn't got them results. How do you go about then treating that client to help them get results? Like, do you find there's a
Yeah.
pattern
Yeah.
on maybe how they perceive their help, or, what do you think's going on there and how do you go about treating that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think if they've already seen different health professionals, then getting an understanding of what they've done there and what they found beneficial and what they felt like it didn't work is probably a pretty important one, especially in that initial consultation with them. Especially if it is, yeah, an EP. If they've already seen someone, in the year or so prior and didn't find it beneficial, there's no point in rolling out the same exercises for them and hoping for a different result. So getting an understanding of, yeah, what they've been through in the past and what they found helpful and what they found not so beneficial is pretty important. And then I guess, yeah, putting together some goals with them so that they do stay on track this time, maybe talking to them about what their barriers were last time and trying to come up with a bit of a plan to get around that too. Obviously, if it didn't work in the past, something's got to change to be able to make it different. So there's no point in going around doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So what do you think about that? I feel
Yeah.
like one of the things you said earlier with that, the people not wanting to ask for help, I feel like you probably see a bit more of like an athletic population to what I see. A lot of my clients I wouldn't say they're gym goers, so they
Yeah.
probably aren't as, yeah, worried about necessarily asking for the help. They're probably more like the worker side of things, and they're like, it'll be right. I've had this shoulder pain before or whatever. It'll be sweet. I'm strong. Such as, yeah,
Yep.
stuff like that.
Yeah, right. So it's not always the case in the people that you work with. It's probably more so the opposite side of it.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think I can't think of too many clients over the last 3 years that have come in that have like they're doing their own. Like there's people that go and do their own stuff at the gym, and like that's great. But I'd say the majority of the clients come to the clinic. That's their exercise for the week. So they're probably not
Right.
thinking, oh, can you adjust my program, or I'm worried about going backwards. Can you make sure that doesn't happen while we fix this other concern. So that's probably a bit different to
Yeah,
what you
got ya.
do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I suppose, yeah, you probably see a bit of that. I probably am a bit 50-50 with that. Like a little bit of people that the only exercise they do is seeing you, and then a little bit of like, people that have a bit of both. So yeah, there's probably a bit of two sides there that I guess I see, but yeah, definitely that makes sense. Yeah, cool. All right. So
what
Is
was
do
your
you often?
take on the what was your take on the yeah, if someone's already seen the different health professional or the same one and haven't had success?
Yeah, so this is I actually sometimes enjoy this because a lot of the times that is where like I'm really trying to debunk what they did before. And
Mm,
I guess again it depends on the profession and depends on the actual treatment, and I try and remain as like objective as possible. But a lot of if you are seeing them, there's like two reasons there. It's like one, they got given the right amount, the right things, or what I would perceive as the right things, but they still didn't get the result. That's like, okay, was and without being too rude with it, it's like, all right, well, was the work actually being done? Was it, not only being done but being progressed in some way, shape, or form, or like what did that look like? Because if it was the right exercises, but then you didn't stay consistent with it or give the relevant progressions over time, then like that's where you've gone wrong. That's pretty obvious, I would say. And then there's the other side of it that's like, all right, the exercises that were given here were just straight corrective exercises. They weren't going to fix anything. They were just going to get you moving, maybe build a little bit of evidence that you can do more. But then you didn't actually get past that corrective exercise stage. And like a common example of this might be a physio's. Again, not trying to talk bad on physios, but it might have been I went to the physio initially and then I felt a little bit better, but it didn't fix my injury. And I want to get back to being able to do this thing without any pain. But it only helped a little bit but didn't actually fix it. And it's like in
mm,
that moment it's like you just tackle what they did before and sort of educate on where they may have missed that level for progression and how that progression would have then allowed them to build more evidence through that area or more strength or more resilience, whatever that might have been, more mobility, whatever it
yeah,
might have been. And yeah, educate them on that so that they know that it's not just about those corrective exercises. You've actually got to continue strengthening, and which is actually
mm,
going to help fix that approach rather than just those corrective exercises, I guess. So, yeah, I think it's a tough one when they've seen another practitioner because it's like, well, why would I trust you? And I've actually
yeah,
got
yeah,
one of my clients that I've started working with over the last couple of weeks. It's like she's seen physios. She's had it's like a piriformis issue. So um, she's having lots of issues with like piriformis glute med as a result of like getting pain with those, loading up ITB, TFL, all of those areas, and it gives her quite a lot of pain. And she's been dealing with it for ages. Had like Botox injections to try and relax those muscles as well, which seemed to help. But then
yeah,
after
right.
going back to some different movements, it's like seems to flare it up again. Yeah, that's like an example for me is like that's hard because she's seen all these different practitioners. She's also seen other exercise physiologists. And it's like, I guess the biggest thing there is just listening to what actually flared it up because there's certain exercises that she does that are like, they flare it up. And it's like, all right, well, we'll steer clear of that, knowing that we still want to probably train that muscle some way, shape, or form. We're going to find a different way to, I guess, challenge that muscle or build evidence through that area so that you can continue to load that up. But it's hard. It's like I know she's looking at me like, why would I trust you? So then it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
hard as well. But at the same time, it's like, I know that, you have to be confident in that scenario and be like, yeah, well, this
Yep.
is why we're doing this. And this is the way we're going to progress it. And like really lay that out as best you can so that she can trust you. But it is hard,
Mm.
especially when they have seen so many different practitioners. It's like, where do you go to from there? When those exercises that those practitioners would have given her would have been a similar variation of what you would have given them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah. Like
So
you're saying, that's
that's
a good good opportunity to make a difference there. And then if you get that person on side, like you'd like to think that they're gonna, they've told 20, 30 people about the pain that they've had, and now they're telling them that the big horn dog's the man to go and see. So
exactly.
that's how you get the people flooding through the doors. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the best things. No, not about like it's hard to say best thing about your job, but it's like when you get a challenge like that and you're able to
Mm.
tackle it, that's pretty
Yep.
cool. It's really rewarding, and yeah, that's why you do it, right? Is those
Yeah,
complex
absolutely.
cases that they had no idea how to fix themselves, and
Yep.
and then when no one else could, it's like, geez,
I'm the
bit of a
man.
flex. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
All right, Joey, I am a big believer that strength is protection against injury, and it's the number one thing for joint health and body resilience. How does this guide your training principles and your rehab processes that you take with your clients?
Yeah, I'm very much a firm believer that strength is the king or the queen. I think you can, yeah, there's definitely like you can't say that doing, your different mobility work and stretching and stuff like that's not going to be of benefit. But realistically, like dependent once again on what client you've got coming in, whether they're someone that's, done a lot of exercise or very little exercise. I think if someone said to me, this person's going to leave today with 3 or 4 exercises to start working on from home, I'm more than likely going to give them at least 3 out of those 4 are going to be strength based exercises. Unless they probably said to me, oh, I'd like to work on some mobility, or I feel like I'm really tired in this area. It might be something that I'd chuck in there just to show that I've listened to them and they've said that that's something they want to work on. So you could give them something there. But even then, you can still get a lot of benefit in terms of your mobility and your range of motion through doing strengthening exercises. If you do them, the appropriate way. So I think, definitely it's the key to basically all the sessions that I run in here, and I feel like the majority of the guys run. And with an increase in the strength, you're going to be more stable around the joints, and a lot of the time that kind of that freedom with the movement starts to come back anyway. So I feel like you're probably following very much the same thought process with that.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of like if you were to program that mobility, how do you program it? And like, do you do any testing of like mobility and like range of motion stuff in your either in your assessments or ongoing with your clients or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd always assess it in that initial assessment. If there was something there that was stood out as something that I feel like we needed to work on, then I'd put it into their program. Yeah, once again, it depends on the client and how often they're coming into the clinic. If they were such a work cover or a DVA, you're probably more likely to see them at least twice a week, maybe. You can put that in their session, but I wouldn't have it as a focus on as one of the sessions. It'd be either something that we begin with or finish the session with, depending on the other goals of what we're working through. And then I might make more of an emphasis on it in their home program because those kind of things you definitely need to work on more consistently to see the benefits of it. It's not something you can kind of do once or twice a week and expect to see significant results. Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one where you're like, if I'm expecting them to do all these exercises at home, do I want them to be a mobility focused thing, or do we want to keep building on the strength? You know, to get them into that routine where they're doing it independently. So when they do finish, they've still got something there to work on rather than just, keeping the old thoracic a bit loose or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
Would you
Yeah, cool.
would you
Yeah.
allocate specific sessions for that?
Um, no,
Unless they
definitely
were
not.
really sore.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, not usually, unless the only time I would have like a session where it was highly mobility focused would be if someone's come in and like they're a regular and they're just not up to, it might have had something going on in their life or whatever it might be, and
Mm.
they're just not feeling up to completing,
Yep.
a strength-based session for like many different reasons that could be, then potentially you might just give them a lighter session with a bit of mobility and just having a chat, whatever that might look like. But yeah, not
Yep.
usually. And a lot of the mobility exercises that I would program in a session, like if it was a specific exercise for mobility, then it would probably be a loaded mobility exercise. So something where, or either as an accessory in like a superset with a main lift, a main strength lift, or something like that. That's not going to affect their lift, or like in as a loaded mobility exercise, say like an eccentric hip flexor sit up, which is probably for more of an advanced clientele as well, not so much like
Yeah.
a highly injured or older population client or something like that. But yeah, I'd probably focus more on the loaded mobility side of it, like an eccentric contraction focus or something like that that challenges end range strength, but not so much, again, maybe as a warm up, a very nuanced like answer, but it highly dependent on the client. If it's specific mobility
Yeah.
stuff that's not loaded, then it's probably start of the session on something that's relevant to, a main lift or making sure that they can get good range of motion in their squat or something like that. If
Yep.
it's in
Yep.
session, it's either supersetted with a main lift of something that's not going to affect the main lift, and it's just something they've mentioned that they wanted to work on, and you're just squeezing it in wherever you can. If it's also in session, it could be like a loaded mobility work. But yeah, outside of that, probably not too much. A lot of the mobility stuff or focus exercises that I'll give are probably, in their main strength stuff, just challenging end range a little bit more in a safe way. And yeah, that's obviously going to create the stability around the joints and get those muscle fibers active throughout the full range, which will help influence mobility. So yeah, probably not a whole lot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. The only other time I might do a little bit more of like a focus on it, like you've said there, if someone comes in, they're pretty regular and if they're, yeah, like you said, if they've got something else going on, they just want to come in and have a bit of a chat and still do some movement without straining themselves. Or if someone had like a pretty significant flare up, I wouldn't have the whole session focused on
Yeah.
that, but yeah, just something to, ease it back a bit and just get some movement in there and then try and add some lighter strength exercises in there. That's probably where I'd go with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably bang on what I would do as well. Now, a core issue that I see, and I guess also see on social media and stuff like that, and not that these people even know that this is the case, is that their training isn't actually aligned with their goals. So, and this might come down to lots of different reasons. It might come down to like, not having the education or knowing how to train for whatever their goal is. But how important do you think a proper like initial assessment is, and like how does that guide you in finding weaknesses to provide proper direction for those people?
Yeah, it's definitely a massive factor in terms of whether you're going to make it to that goal or not. Once again, I feel like based off what I've seen with your stuff on the socials and stuff, like probably you're talking a bit more about like the sporting performance side of things or things where people want to get stronger in the gym or doing stuff like that. So I'd say, yeah, more so with my client loader to be trying to get them back to doing certain movements and stuff at work. I guess, yeah, a lot of the time they're focusing or they're putting a lot of the emphasis on just what we tell them. So I wouldn't say necessarily we're with a lot of the clients we're trying to make them the next bloody Pele or whatever. Excuse my language there. Yeah. So in terms of that side of things, like it's a no brainer that if you have some sort of goal that you want to get back to in terms of like you want to be faster or be able to jump higher or do this certain lift or whatever. Like you got to, absolutely get that proper assessment and try and work out where you are as a baseline and what sort of things you need to work on to be able to get you to that point. And that's where, pretty thorough, obviously initial consultation and going through all the different movements and understanding how you're moving. I don't know what sort of technology you're operating with, but we've got a camera here that can watch the people do their movements and you can talk them through that. Not that we probably use it as much as we should. So that's something that I'd probably implement if there was someone that had a real specific goal to be able to do something on that more athletic side of things. Try and get them watching themselves do the movement at the moment or, trying to show them the numbers and potentially where we would like to see them get to as a bit of a marker in terms of if you can get to this point, that's going to result in, this sort of progression towards your goal. That's probably the kind of thing I'd be looking at. But yeah, what do you think in regards to that? You're obviously very much big goal guy.
Yeah, I guess like direction of the question as well could be lined up with even people that, as an example, someone that might have osteoporosis, but they have like a gym class that they go to that isn't really that heavy on the weight bearing side of things. And we know now for like osteoporosis, you want to lift as heavy as you can and create as much impact or bone loading as what you can to stimulate,
Hmm.
maintenance of that bone density. But it's like an example that I can think of just off the top of my head would be someone having low bone density and osteoporosis, but then not wanting to give up their regular gym class to do the things that
Hmm.
they specifically need for like to get the benefit out of it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably an example that we could both maybe relate to is training not aligned with their goals. And like the way that I would probably tackle that is like you just education is like you have to know
Hmm.
that if you want this result, it's this is how you get it. And if you don't do this, then like this is where it's going to trend. Like it's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
dose causal responses. If you don't do the thing that you need to do, you're going to go backwards in the thing that you actually want. So I think the biggest thing there when their training isn't aligned with their goals is probably in that initial assessment. Like, yeah, you want to do a proper assessment on them and how they can move and whatever, but it's probably more so focused towards the education and making
Mm.
sure that they know all the information so that they can make an informed decision on what their training is going to look like, and know that it can be different, that's going to give them more benefit as well. But yeah, they don't always take that because I think quite often people like to um, continue doing what's comfortable to them, and that's easier for them to have a good routine, which is fine. Like, they're still moving and things like that, but I think a lot of the time they could be doing something better for them.
Mm.
And yeah, I guess that's sort of the other side of that question that I was sort of leaning on as well. Yeah, what do you think about that?
So in that situation, would you? I understand you're talking through what's best for them. Would you be looking to see if they can add that into the class or try and do something on top of it? What would your recommendations be there in regards to that for that specific person?
Well, that's a good question. I think obviously in that scenario, having nothing to do with the actual exercise class that they're doing, I would say I would put the emphasis on them that if they want to get some extra benefit out of that class and them enjoying that class, then they need to find some way to add a little bit more load for their osteoporosis to benefit that. But yeah, like I would be like trying to push them into some kind of general strength training routine that's going to be a little bit more specific to improving their bone density. But if I couldn't do that, then I would be the next best thing is that you find a way to add more load to your class that you're already enjoying, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I've just got someone at the moment that I've just thought of. She was looking to get back into curves over the last month or so, and she has a meniscus injury, and it's impacted her ability to do squats and obviously a lot of different knee flexion movements. So she spoke to me about, not only having a program that she can work on at home, but potentially some exercises that she could do as alternatives to something in the class. So I guess that's, yeah, even though this person that we're talking about with the osteoporosis, may be able to do everything in the class, is there ways that we can make it a little bit more challenging or add that little bit more emphasis on what we need to focus on whilst also doing the movements, obviously in a group setting that she feels comfortable in. And then that way she still gets kind of that stimulus that she needs to promote, the different changes whilst
Mm.
also keeping her doing what she's enjoying.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess this sort of leads me on to like next topic as well, which is a little bit nuanced in terms of like, you know, what rep range to use and how you set that up for different people, what exercises you give. But what would you say is like the foundational principles for developing strength effectively and safely with like a large range of different clients at different levels?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's very, very much dependent on, yeah, like you're saying, I guess the experience of the person doing exercises. I think when they first come in, the last thing you want to do is give them too much and then they leave and they're like, well, not only I've got too many exercises to work on, but if that first session, if you push them too hard and they're sore the next day and they haven't been used to that, like you got a long way to go from there. So I think without, if you or I went to the gym and you pushed it too hard and you had a bit of a break and you wake up the next day or the next 2 days sore, like you're probably expecting that, but a lot of these people aren't.
Yeah.
So I think to start with, like if I was going to follow something pretty rough, like I'd probably start with like your 2 sets of 8 to 12 or something like that for the first week or so. And then once they're getting back into it and feeling comfortable with it, then I'd look to start to increase the sets. And then, yeah, after that, start dropping the reps down a little bit, focus a little bit more on the strength side of things. And then, yeah, try and get to that point where we can, we've done an initial assessment, say, 6 to 8 weeks down the track, try and do some other assessment just to show that they're progressing and that they can handle doing these heavier loads, and obviously show that to them and, let them know that this is the progress they've made. For whatever reason they're coming to the clinic, you can obviously make some good progressions in that time frame, and that'll keep them on track with that. So yeah, it's very much dependent on the client and how they've responded to the exercises. But yeah, generally it'd be starting pretty light and then gradually building up over those kind of first 6 to 8 weeks and seeing where they're at there and how they're responding to it. Would you follow something similar yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think yeah, it's always hard. Like sometimes you're trying to build true strength for someone, but you can't just start them straight away with, like a 5x5 bench press or something. It's like in an ideal world, sure, but it's not gonna work, and it's not gonna like often be attractive to them to get them coming back. And once you sort of work with someone for a period of time and you get them used to, challenging weights within those higher rep ranges, then often, and it depends on, like, most of the time, I feel like most people, you can get them down to the lower rep ranges if you've been working with them for a long enough period of time and you have a way to do that safely with good amounts of stability, good amounts of, like, form and all of that as well. And so I'm actually quite a big fan on, like, getting people to those lower rep ranges. Again, very nuanced. It's not going to be for everyone. I'm not going to get, all the older ladies that aren't going to enjoy that to that level. Like, some might, and you might be able to really test them in terms of strength, but a lot of them aren't going to enjoy that and it's not going to be something that's consistent for them. So in that case, probably not. But I have quite a lot of, like, let's say, middle-aged women that do quite enjoy that and that I've been working with for a decent period of time, that over time you get to those lower rep ranges and you can really focus on, creating true strength with heavier weight, still keeping good form and all of that as well. I think it's obviously important to have that periodization as well. So you can't just take them straight there and you have to build a good solid foundation first, teach them how to brace properly, teach them good form and all of that. And then you can slowly integrate that into their training. But yeah, I definitely think that isn't something that you can do straight away. And you do have to, build that little bit of a dose before you slowly add that progression in there. But I guess this leads me on to my next question anyway, which was, like, how do you guide clients to understand and implement key principles like progressive overload to make their training more effective? Like, especially if you get a little bit of pushback from a client being like, oh, I don't know if I can do that and things like that. How do you go about educating them on progressive overload? How do you go about implementing progressive overload for your clients and different things like that?
I think, yeah, once again, very dependent on if the client's doing stuff on their own or whether they're generally coming into the clinic for their sessions. So if they're coming into the clinic, it's a pretty simple one. Like, I basically tell them what to do, and if they don't like it, no. Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like we're probably realistically, like, a lot of the time they'll probably think that they're working super hard.
Yeah.
They're coming in, they're putting in the effort, but they're never really at that point where they're still talking to you while ever they're doing their exercises. So, they're not straining to that point where they're like, I can't do any more. You've smashed me. Like, it'd be very rare that we'd get a client in here like that. So yeah, in terms of, like, the progressive overload side of things, when they're coming in the clinic, it's, you're always looking probably every session to make something, extra couple of reps or bump that weight up, and trying to obviously keep an eye on that. If there is that period where nothing seems to change for a while, address what's going on there and potentially having a chat to them about, I think you could try and do a little bit more here, or let's bump this weight up and see how you go. But yeah, generally it's pretty simple one when they're coming into the clinic. Outside of the clinic, it's probably dependent, like if they're doing stuff from home or going to the gym themselves, it's probably a bit more of that, around that education on when they feel like they should be up to it. So obviously they're going to have to keep track of what they're doing. Otherwise they're just going to be going to the gym, putting a pin in the machine and going, hope that's where I'm up to. So whether they're using an app or writing stuff down or keeping it in their notes or whatever is obviously going to be important. And then, yeah, just explaining to them that obviously keep track of how you felt, throughout those movements. And as long as you're maintaining your form and you can lift that weight, then, that next week, if you leave yourself a little message there that it's probably time to try bumping it up a little bit. Yeah, that's probably how I'd go about it. But it's, yeah, very much dependent on the client and whether they're
Yeah,
doing
definitely.
stuff independently or in the clinic themselves. Do you feel like it's much
Yeah,
the same for
definitely.
you?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like, most of the time I'm looking for my main progression to be in weight, but obviously you can't do that all the time. So if you have, like, a reasonably new client that's relatively untrained, a lot of the time those initial progressions are probably going to be easier to find in weight. Another little tool that I've come up with to, I guess, make sure that those clients that, and you might not have as many of these, but I have a couple of clients that see me like once a month or even once every 6 months, is I'll create a little bit of a spreadsheet that, let's say on a cable exercise or an exercise that isn't really easy to increase in weight very quickly, like a lateral raise or something like that. It's like you might put in across the weeks an increase in reps, might be 1 rep every 1 or 2 weeks. And then if you've got an exercise like a dumbbell squat or something, you might have an extra kilo every couple of weeks. And then they go for that over, 4 to 6 week period and then come back and get a new program with maybe similar exercises or slightly different ones. And that's sort of a little way I like to make sure that there's progressive overload in there. And obviously, you educate them on the importance of that and actually following that. But yeah, a lot of the time, same thing is when you've got those clients that come and see you, it's just like, well, this is what we're doing today. And very, very nuanced behind who it is that you're actually training. But like I said, a lot of the times I'll especially on those main lifts, it'll be around hopefully around weight and trying to increase weight. But yeah, very nuanced approach when it comes to that and the clients that you see, and yeah, especially with some of the NDIS clients, that can be challenging as well because they might be not having a good day that day, and you might have to adjust it on the fly or something like that. But most of the time, the progressive overload, the key focus area will be in weight and trying to, build some strength. But yeah, just depends on the person, the exercise, and things like that. So yeah. Now, Joe, I've got some dating questions for you. So I want to know, in your career as an exercise physiologist, what are some ambitions that you've got, and what are you passionate about developing further? And will you marry me? No.
Well, I say like, yeah, super happy where I'm at the moment in terms of like really enjoy working at the clinic here. And being in that space where you've got obviously a lot of colleagues around you and stuff like that, and there's probably not as much pressure to go out and find your own work and stuff. So yeah, in terms of where I'm at in my life at the moment, I feel like that's pretty perfect for what I need, and we get along super well here. Like the team we've got here is a heap of fun, so always makes work more enjoyable. It doesn't feel like you're coming to work a lot of the time. So yeah, but I guess further down the track, I'd love to develop the skills to one day be able to go out and do my own thing. Yeah, whether that's just as an EP clinic or running something in some sort of multidisciplinary team. So yeah, depending on what sort of networks you've got and the people that that you might be able to link up with there. Yeah, it'd be really, I think, not only having the confidence, like as a practitioner, to be able to do that. I feel like, in a couple of years' time, that's something that's definitely achievable, but also understanding, how to run a business and stuff like that, which you've obviously managed to do, mate. So it can't be that hard. But yeah, I'm
Fair
mate. I'm
call.
pretty open to getting married soon. So if you send me a big
So
fat
yes
ring,
to that
I'll
one.
I'll take the offer. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not too sure what else you asked. I think that covered most of the question.
Yeah, that was it. That was the most important one anyway. So, no, very
Yeah.
nice. What about on like a personal fitness goals? Do you have anything that you're working towards? Anything in particular that you are really looking to achieve, or you're just sort of yeah? What are you doing for your own fitness? Things like that.
I try and keep myself pretty accountable. I know a lot of people obviously we do this kind of work day in day out, so you probably should be keeping yourself in some sort of relatively good nick. I tend to do a lot of stuff just on my own. I'll come into the clinic here and use the gym, and then I enjoy doing a bit of running too. But in terms of like anything specific, I don't have anything at the moment, but a bit like yourself, mate, I wouldn't mind giving a marathon a crack at some point. So who knows? 2026 Gold Coast Marathon, you might see me up there with you.
I might have to do it again then. I said one and done, but
One
if
and
you're
done.
doing it, then I
Yeah.
might have to. Might have,
Yeah, yeah. I've always enjoyed my running. I feel like it's great that people are getting into it. Like if we can get more people, getting active in the country, it's got to be a benefit. And this is one of the questions you asked me earlier, but I don't feel like I covered the whole lot. A lot of the generations before us probably grew up where it was like go to work. What do you need to do exercise for? But obviously the younger ones are more so into their exercise, which is awesome. Should lead to greater health outcomes. You would think there's going to be a lot more people probably visiting, podiatrists and physios and EPs to work out what's going wrong with their running. But that's a lot better
that
than
is true.
having them staying in hospital for a few nights because their heart's, about to explode. So,
Also
um,
true.
yeah, yeah. So, in terms of what I've got on at the moment, nothing specific that I'm working towards, but I always try and keep myself active,
Yeah.
exercise, 5, 6
Playing
days a
any
week or whatever, and
soccer or cricket these days?
no, no. I didn't ever sign up for soccer when I came down to Newcastle. So certainly not something that's off the cards, but I haven't played for probably 4 years now. So the touch would be a bit rusty to say the least. And
Well, when you
cricket, I
move to
had
the
this.
Gold Coast, I've got a team for you. So
Yeah, I've seen those highlights, mate. Looks like the Premier League. Um, And then yeah, cricket. I had the summer off this year just because I had a few things on, and I didn't miss it all that much. So I don't know. I feel like I'm not old, but I feel like when you got other things on, like it's pretty easy to cut back on the sport a little bit. So I might try and get back into it and a little bit more recreational. Let's say a bit of Sunday league or a bit of eighth div cricket or something like that, rather than
Yeah,
stuff that's a
bit of
little bit
fun.
more competitive. Yeah, I don't think I need that anymore in my life. Maybe I do.
Although I reckon you'd be too good for, those grades of cricket or soccer anyway, so you'd probably get bored there and end up playing up
Oh,
anyway.
I don't know, mate. Haven't scored a run since I moved down here. So that's why I
Well,
gave up because I wasn't good enough. No, I mean, yeah, I'd probably still overthink it. I think a lot of it's psychological, like anything, mate. You got
yeah.
to, believe in yourself. So who knows? I might make a
Yep.
triumphant return.
Oh, that'd be good. Well, I've got two final questions to go through. Firstly, if there was like one key message or piece of advice you could share with anyone struggling with an injury, or, even if it's like some sort of sporting goal or just want to train smarter, return to work, whatever that might look like, what would that be?
I think probably, yeah, one of the biggest things is, especially if you're seeing an exercise physiologist, is it's not going to come quickly. Like, you know, everyone wants to be fixed within a day or within a week or whatever, but you're going to have to put the hard work in. And that looks different for every person and every person's injury. But if you stick at it and you've got someone that, is offering you the right advice and you believe in it and you keep working away at it, you'll get there. But it's probably not going to be something that's going to be fixed overnight, and that's what people have probably got to get used to when they come and see an EP. You might get some, minor benefit, but realistically, it's more of a long-term thing. And yeah, hopefully, if you put the hard work in, it's something that you don't have to worry about ever again.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's pretty good. And last question, what do you think is more important, strength or cardiovascular health?
I probably would go strength. I think, yeah. I mean, there's definitely crossover for both. Like, there's so many different conditions out there. I mean, you can go too extreme on either end there, and if you're too strong, it puts a lot more strain on your heart and stuff like that. But then if you don't have any strength whatsoever, you won't be able to maintain your fitness. So, yeah, that's a challenging one. But I'd probably say, yeah, strength's pretty important, definitely.
Yeah, fair call. I'd probably, I'm a bit of a fence sitter on that, thinking that they're both important, but obviously without the strength, it's, you're not going to be able to stay active. And if you can't stay active, then are you really going to be able to help your cardiovascular health? So I think that's probably a pretty good
Yes.
answer anyway.
Yep.
All right.
Very much so.
Well, we might leave it there, Joey. Thank you for being a part of the podcast, and we might at some point have to do it again. Maybe when you come up to the Gold Coast to do the Gold Coast Marathon next year.
Mate, I'd love to get on there again. Absolute pleasure. We'll do one face to face one time.